Songwriters are the backbone of this industry. Without songwriters, there is no industry. There's billions left on the table. You know, as a creator, yes, you're creative and you're making this music and you're being amazing. You're a business. Know how your business runs before you hand that over to somebody else.
Hi, I'm Hazel Savage, and today I'm talking to legal and publishing expert Bina Mystery. Bina's been working in the music industry for 20 years, previously at PRS, Apple, and now SoundCloud. In this episode today, you'll find out how songwriters can find out if they're leaving money on the table, when to look for a publishing deal, and the problem with unclaimed royalties. So, Bina, thank you so much. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome.
Excited.
So first thing I want to do is kick off. Like, how do you like to introduce yourself? What do you tell people about yourself? Like, what's the Bina elevator pitch?
Oh my gosh, what is my Bina elevator pitch? I'm a music lawyer. I'm a sneakerhead. I run my own company. I am director of music licensing at SoundCloud. I love music. I love people.
There's a couple of things I'm already excited to talk about. So, and I've got to go to it first, the sneakerhead comment.
Knew it.
So how many pairs are we talking? Or is it not volume? Is it like quality? What's the game?
Well, it started as volume.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my hands up and go, I counted a couple of weeks ago. I hit about 250 pairs of Nikes. But I had a massive cull, and now it's just gone down to quality. So I've charitied a bunch. Yeah. So now it's just a lot of Air Max 1s, a lot of Jordans.
And so I noticed you pronounce it Nikes as well. I would have said Nikes.
It's Nike.
But so that's probably incorrect.
It's Nike.
Thank you very much. Now I know. And just the one brand loyal.
Yeah.
Nice.
One thing I've learned about myself over the years and all the companies I've worked for as well, very loyal to the brand. Very loyal to the brand.
Loyal to the brand. Yeah. First quote of the podcast.
Yeah. Brand loyalty.
I love it. And of course the other kind of headline takeaway there as well is that you're a music lawyer.
I am.
So I'd love to learn, I'd love to learn for myself and also for people listening. How did you get into that career? Where did it start? And like, did you always know that was what you wanted to do? Like, what was that path?
Seriously, I still wonder how I'm a lawyer. I still don't believe that I'm actually a music lawyer. Never in my days did I think I was wanting to be a lawyer. I didn't even think about being a lawyer. For me, it was always about working in music.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was it. From the age of like 15, 14, music. What do you want to do? Don't know. Want to work in music.
Yeah.
And that was it. Did a bit of pirate radio as a kid. I said as a kid, so I was 16. Did a bit of pirate radio. And then I started working at PRS for Music. And just from there, I started looking at contracts, looking at writer contracts. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then from there, it just evolved. And the few jobs I got after that were just kind of doing music licensing. And then I went back to university, retrained, became a lawyer. And here I am.
So when you say you went back, did you go to university the first time and study something different?
I did. I studied psychology.
Oh.
And only because I couldn't get onto the music degree at the time. So the year that I went to university, it was the first year the university was doing like music management, music business courses.
Yeah.
And they needed people with like straight A's.
Yeah.
That wasn't me.
They were being... Well, when I went to uni, there wasn't really anyone offering a course in music. So I did something sort of very, very traditional and academic. But I wonder as well, when you were that sort of younger version of yourself, did you kind of have a dream job in mind? Because I always thought I wanted to be like an A&R. I don't anymore. I want to do what I do right now. But did you have that kind of like, I want to be a rock star, I want to be a singer, I want to be an artist manager? Like, what was if I could have any job dream?
Definitely not in the creative side. I'm not creative at all. I'm tone deaf. Just to add as well.
Got that out of the way.
At all. No, I just wanted to work for Sony.
Right. Oh.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was a dream.
You just saw that company and you thought, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, because I think as a 16-year-old, the record labels were so prominent. And, and there was a lot of, back in the 90s, there was a lot of street teams, so a lot of like promotional campaigns. Yeah. There's a lot of that. And Sony was quite big back then. I mean, it's still a big record label. But there was something about Sony at the time, and I can't remember what it is now, but it was so prominent that it was like, I'm going to work for Sony.
Yeah.
No idea why.
It was probably the artists they had,
Potentially,
or who they were repping, or their campaigns.
Yeah.
Because I actually felt the same way about EMI, because I just think it was like the legendary brand, back 20 years ago when I was sort of growing up, and I think it just sort of catches the imagination, doesn't it? Yeah. So I also happen to know that obviously you're a massive music fan. You got into music early, but tell me a little bit about your brother and how that influenced you.
So my brother, who's the one that really got me into music, and I remember him coming home with, so back in the day when you got albums in CDs, they used to come in these like kind of packs, and they were imports kind of thing. It was like a cardboard. They're like rectangular cardboard. Album like sleeves.
Well, they were like, especially from Japan, they were like bigger, weren't they? It was like
they
a
were the
case
big
that
ones.
Came over the top of the case.
Yes, and I remember him coming home with one of those, and it was just, that was the kind of start of the music collecting kind of piece of like, always into vinyl, but this was the first time the CDs came out. And I remember him bringing this home, and I was like, oh my God, I love this album. And then from there, I mean, he's always been into music. He had a record store in the Midlands from 97.
Right.
Started in 97. It closed its doors in 2012, and it was one of the best record stores in the UK for kind of for black music, for soul, hip hop, R&B. All the DJs from London were coming down.
Amazing.
He did an import business, and it was interesting because things that he was getting on, that he was selling on an import basis, it was like he was getting Japanese imports, but the people in Japan couldn't get them, so he was getting them from Japan.
Yeah.
But then they were buying them back,
right?
Because they weren't able to access them. So
that's wild.
Yeah. So the record store was around for 16 years.
Fantastic.
15 years.
Well, I don't know if you've seen in the news, just in the last couple of weeks as well, they're reopening the HMV on Oxford Street.
Are they?
Or one of them. There used to be two. And so it's kind of gone full circle. They've got a big wrap up on the building at the minute. So what do you think about the stores coming back? Good thing, bad thing?
I'm here for it.
Yeah?
I'm here for it. I grew up on vinyl. I grew up on physical products. I grew up on buying an album, taking it home and just listening to it constantly. And I miss that.
Yeah.
And I think the younger generation, they've missed out on something by not having that.
Well, it's almost like, I just remember when it was such a scarcity, music. Like if you didn't have it on CD, or you didn't have a friend who had it, or you weren't sure when it was going to be played on the radio, that was it.
Totally.
You could hear a song and then you just would not hear it again, other than by luck. Yeah. And I think that sort of discovery element is a bit of a miss these days. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love having absolutely everything at my fingertips, no matter what you want, but that real hustle that you had to have.
No, totally. How many times did you sit there with your cassette player, waiting for the song to come on the radio, so you could press record at that point, and then stop it before they started talking, so then you could create your own little mixtape, like all of that.
I've even got a cassette, and it was mine and my brother's favourites, of Unchained Melody, Righteous Brothers.
Yeah.
We just love that song. And I know, as well as I know that song, I also know the bit of speaking that comes on in the end before it stops, because that's what we captured on the radio. Yeah. So good times. All right, so before we get into the kind of the more nuts and bolts of the worky stuff, you got to hit me up with a few artists though. So when you're taking that vinyl home, when you were browsing in the shops, like, it doesn't even have to be your sort of your all-time favourites, but what's a couple of artists that meant a lot to you growing up, or that you discovered music?
I think growing up, in the 90s, it was very much R&B. It was very much Mary J. Blige, Jodeci,
nice.
Keith Sweat, which is one of my favourite artists, Gerald Levert.
Yep.
I love Gerald. I'm gutted I never got to see him before he passed. That's one artist I'm absolutely gutted about not getting to see him.
I keep a mental list like that of like who's still to see, who do I want to see, where am I at with that?
Totally. And today I think anyone that kind of really knows me, I'm more of I'm still stuck in the 90s. I always say 90s was the best era for music, and I'm still stuck in the 90s. So I'm more of a bit of a hip hop head now.
Nice.
So I do love kind of Nas. If anyone knows me, knows how much I'm obsessed with Nas. Nas is one of my favourites. But yeah, I think I'm still very much in that kind of 90s R&B hip hop kind of vibe. But
Love it. I mean, it was a vibe.
Totally.
It certainly was a vibe. Okay, so I wanted to jump into you first, a little bit about publishing. You know, because this is your wheelhouse.
This is
what you know about. And I have to say as well, it's not my area of expertise. It's probably one part of the industry I've never worked in. But I'd love to talk a little bit about, you know, given your career in the industry, how has the publishing landscape changed? Sort of, and I know that's a really big question, and it's not just a one-line answer, but what to you then stands out as the most important changes from when you started to now?
One thing I'll say, it hasn't changed.
Right.
It hasn't
Bombshell.
changed. It hasn't. It's still the same. It's still a mess. It's still very complex. The one thing that has changed is the way, for songwriters, for example, back in the day, you needed a publisher. Right, yep. As a songwriter, there weren't that many. Well, there were a lot of songwriters, but many songwriters didn't call themselves songwriters until they had a publisher, and then music was being published. But now, the way in which the industry is, I could be a songwriter today. Right. I can write a song, I can get you to sing it. We can release it on Friday.
Yeah,
like that's how it is now. So, I think it's made it. I think the industry's changed in the sense that it's more accessible. In that sense, but publishing as a whole, it hasn't changed.
So you feel like the gatekeepers of music production, creating music, writing a song, like you say, you and I, we're in the studio right now. Yeah. It's coming out Friday. It's going to be very Nas influenced.
I'm not rapping.
Exactly. Me neither. So we're going to need a guest vocalist if anyone wants to dial in. I jest. So the gatekeepers have gone. So now it's a more open industry.
Yeah.
How if the industry is still sort of hasn't innovated that much, how are they kind of handling that volume change? Like, what companies have sprung up to kind of...
There are a lot of companies that kind of do data management and that side of it, but that's more for companies like SoundCloud or, you know, the Apples of the world, or all the kind of bigger companies that will work with them. But as a creator, you're on your own.
Right.
You're on your own. As a creator, you're on your own. And this is one of the reasons why I set up my business as well, was to help creators understand the business. So as a songwriter, when you have a publishing deal, your publisher looks after everything for you. They make sure your works are registered. They're collecting their royalties for you. They're doing all that side of it. You as a creator now, off you go. You write a song, you release it. Mm-hmm. Do you know what royalties you're getting? Do you know what rights you have? Do you know where your music is? So that's the side of it, which is now, you know, you've got your winners and your losers, so to speak. And, you know, the winners are the creators can get their music out, but they're also the losers as well, because if they're not educated enough, they're leaving a lot of money on the table. You know, as I said, publishing is still a mess. It's just a bigger mess now, because there's more and more songs out there.
So when it comes to the artist, you know, what's your advice when you work with artists or when you've spoken to artists? Like, and this sort of reminds me of the kind of question you get in startup world and entrepreneurship. Like, at what point should you start caring about the publishing?
The moment you even think about writing a song.
Got it.
Even before you thought about it. Even before you thought about it. And I think this is where the industry can change. And I say this and people go, really? But the industry, it can change if at the point you write a song, you sit down on your own or with a co-writer, mainly with a co-writer. If you sit down to write that song, just getting the initial bits down as to who owns that song, who the songwriters are, what percentages you each own, having that one agreement between you, making sure that song's registered, and just anything else that goes after it, that in itself will change so much of the industry. And it sounds so simple, but it is. And this is where all the problems in the kind of the publishing world are coming from, because there's, you know, there's no ownership. People aren't having conversations because people don't want to talk about money. You know, you and I. Well, this is it. You know, they're like, well, I wrote my song with my friend and it's all fine, and it's not fine.
It's fine till it's not.
Exactly.
So interestingly, then, say for the sake of simplicity, it's an individual artist and they recorded it in their bedroom. Okay, so they are the sole songwriter in this case. That next step where you said they need to go ahead and register it.
Yeah.
Where is that? Like, what are the platforms?
Yeah. Can I say one thing before we go on?
Yeah.
So one thing I always say is this one thing, you'll know this as well, but there's two parts of a song. You've got the composition.
Yep.
So you've got the songwriters who've written it, authors, and then you have the sound recording.
Of course.
Right? So you can have a composition without sound recording. You can't have a sound recording without composition. It's one thing I always love to say and just remind people, the composition always comes first. So if you've written a song, you are the songwriter. If you have then recorded that song, you're the singer, you're the performer, you're the artist on that song. So there's two different copyrights there altogether.
Yep.
If you then recorded that in the bedroom and that is your sound recording,
Yep.
what people used to call the master recording, the sound recording, you own that. So that's another, you're a rights holder as well.
Yeah.
So you've got three different elements there. So at that point, if you are the singer-songwriter and you own that song 100% on the publishing side and the sound recording side, you then, as a songwriter, you should be in the UK, should be a member of a PRS for Music, the UK, which is a performing rights organisation, and also MCPS, which is Mechanical Copyright Protection Society, where I started my music career, just where I started many moons ago. Register the song with them. As a performer, as an artist, you should also be registered with PPL, which is the Neighbouring Rights Society in the UK. So just having those registrations, having your songs registered with them, that's a starting
well, I think,
point.
and I know we've oversimplified it massively there for the sake of structure, but I think it really does help, you know, for people who are new to the industry, who might be recording and releasing music on SoundCloud, you know, and we are talking UK specific here, but who are those bodies, like you've just said there, PRS, PPL, that people need to know those names.
Absolutely.
And, you know, hopefully they're going to become big and famous and they're going to have a lot of music out there.
Absolutely.
But laying that groundwork is important.
Yeah. And it's one thing I always teach as part of my business when I'm working with songwriters, creators, strip it all back. Like, yes, you want to be creative and you want exposure and you want your songs heard and you want all these streams and you're looking to get playlisted because that's what everybody wants. Absolutely. But ultimately, you're a business. You have to understand where the money's coming from, how you get that money, what your rights are. So always just stripping it back to the point of, you've written a song, you own that song. If you've written it with somebody else, have that conversation and then getting it registered and just knowing.
So is this why a lot of artists at that point, they sort of start working with a manager? Because, you know, it's kind of the temptation to go, that's the admin. Yeah. I'll make the TikTok reels, but somebody else can do the registering with the PRS. Is that kind of what do you see a lot of artists doing that, or are more kind of DIY these days?
Yeah, no, they do. And when I speak to a lot of people, it's like, I'll just get myself a manager. Well, is that what manager does? Can I just get them to do it? I'm like, yeah, but one, are you ready for a manager?
Yeah.
Because you remember, they're going to take a cut of anything that they do for you. But also, if you're hiring somebody to do a job for you, how do you know they're doing the right job? If you don't know, how do you know that they're doing the right job?
So always better to learn it yourself first.
Always learn it yourself. And just remember, like, as a creator, yes, you're creative and you're making this music and you're being amazing. You're a business. You are a business at the end of the day. And that's one thing I always try and push. Like, you're creative, but you're also a business. Know how your business runs before you hand that over to somebody else.
Yeah, smart hiring that way.
Totally.
You know, I know how to do the job so I can hire for it.
Absolutely.
So say they're at the point at which the money's coming in. We're sort of going to move on to that part of it now. So, and I'm going to ask as if I don't know the answer. Do they claim the money directly from PRS?
Kind of. Well, yeah. So if you are self-published songwriter, I'm going to talk about self-published songwriter. Absolutely, you register the song. As and when the royalties come through, you will receive royalties directly from PRS for your composition piece. That's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
If you're a singer and you own the sound recording, whatever distributor you're using let's talk about streaming for a moment. Whatever distributor you're using to deliver your content to streaming platforms like SoundCloud, like Apple Music, like Amazon, the money will flow from them to you. And I think
that's where some of the confusion is, because there's a lot of innovation in this space as well. A lot of new startup companies coming out trying to solve the rights and the royalties issue. And, you know, if you just Googled it, you'd think, oh, this person's going to pay me, this person's going to pay me. They're saying I've got money here, money there. So understanding that sort of that flow, that diagram.
Totally.
And where the money comes and how that works.
Absolutely.
And you don't need to be working with everyone.
No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the good thing is, if you are self-published, you're just in the UK, obviously you can collect yourself. PRS does have reciprocal agreements with other societies, other countries, but then there are kind of administrators out there that you can sign up to that have a bigger footprint. Sort of publishers do as well. They have bigger footprints in other countries, so they can go and collect your royalties for you in those countries as well. But it's just knowing how it works here is a start.
And that's the best place to start, especially if you are here. So
Totally.
In terms of unclaimed royalties then, which was where I was getting up to, like what's the scale of the challenge?
The challenge, there's billions left
right
on the table.
Yeah.
Right. I spoke to different people in different companies, and it's like there's billions left on the table, and this again all comes back. It's not all about education. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying this will just fix everything, but majority of songwriters will leave approximately 50% of their streaming royalties behind. They're only collecting 50% because they don't know that on a composition side there's two revenue streams that come from a stream.
Right.
Revenue sources that come from a stream.
Right.
So they're leaving 50% behind. And there's loads of other revenue sources as well.
And I wonder if as well, is it obviously interesting a stat on 50% is left behind. Say, for example, I popped a song up online and it does very, very modestly. And I just go, do you know what? It's not even worth me claiming because it's like $2. The billions, are we talking, is it hundreds of millions of artists with small payments, or are there some sizable pots of money out there?
There's some sizable pots of money out there.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. Because it's not just the songwriter that's starting out, or the independent songwriter, that the self-published one who doesn't know how to handle their business. There's a lot of bigger artists out there and songwriters out there that haven't probably registered their works properly, or their publisher hasn't done it, or there's been disputes along the line as well. So then there's a pot of money there sitting in dispute. It's unclaimed because they didn't have that conversation when they wrote that song, and they're fighting over who owns that 1% of the song or whatever it is. So.
I do remember a really fun challenge we had back in the day when I worked at Shazam, where we had half of Beyonce's music just spelt regular Beyonce, and the other half where there was the highlight over the E. And because those are then seen as different words, they don't map to each other exactly. All of our Beyonce stats were split 50-50. Totally. And I'm sure, that's just one of many examples of
totally.
How artists can spell their names differently, different names.
Metadata is...
I feel like P. Diddy's created a lot of problems
for
himself.
He's created a lot of problems. The amount of times he's changed his name.
Exactly. No disrespect to Puff Daddy, but I think if you do keep changing your name, and I think Prince was just effing with us.
Just keeping it as that.
Exactly. Big fan. I'm a big fan. That's super interesting. So do you feel like the majority of that unclaimed revenue, is it recognised and is it in holding, or is it completely unidentified?
Oh, I think there's a good chunk of that which is completely unidentified.
So would you have any recommendations for an artist who thinks they might be in that position, or what is the even next step they can do to figure out if they are in that position?
Oh, good question.
Because I feel like you tell me and I'm going to go and build a business around it.
I'm 50-50.
All right, Hang on, can we write that down as a split right now?
Just get the contract signed right now.
Love it. She's a lawyer. I'm going to watch it.
I think the one thing is also, there's only there's statute of limitations, only a certain time that you can go back and claim certain royalties. So even if you wrote a song 10 years ago and there's royalties sitting there, there's only a certain point you can go back and claim. But I think just at this point now, just start getting your admin on point, start registering your songs. I always say to songwriters, creators as well, like, just track it, see where your songs are being played.
Yeah.
And check, like, if your song was played on SoundCloud, also songwriters, it takes 6 to 9 months before you get your royalties.
Of course, yeah, there is that sort of that window.
That window. On the artist side, you can get your royalties within a couple of months, a month maybe. But as a songwriter, it can be potentially 6 to 9 months. So, if your song was played on a streaming service in January and that hasn't come into your distribution payment by, June or even like July, go back and check. Like, just make sure your song's registered. Make sure, and if it isn't, just go and speak to like PRS and say, hold up, I just wanted to check, I've not received royalties for this. And they can go and do a little bit of legwork for you as well. And
a lot of these platforms as well have really good analytics now. And, you can literally see where the streams are coming in from in music streaming. You can see where the performances are happening. And so I guess it's a question of, like, honestly, like in any job where there's admin, just like make sure you're logging in, make sure you're checking your stats, check your data, and check it's all as expected.
That's what it is. It's just like, I've created this little checklist for people where they can just go in and go, written a song, have I done this, yeah, done. That's
Love it. And so where can artists access this list? Or do they have to message you directly on LinkedIn?
No. So as I mentioned, I run a company called Music Defined, which I set up 3 years. I was coming up to the third birthday in December.
Yep.
I set up 3 years ago, and it's to support creators, singer-songwriters, to teach them about the business. So follow me on Instagram at Music Defined UK.
Love it.
Right? Yeah, that's right.
But I think this is super helpful, because what you're doing there is you're taking a skill that you know a lot about, that to you is second nature. You're looking at this day in, day out. You're obviously a qualified lawyer as well. And you've just got a willingness to share that information, and you want to work with other artists.
Absolutely. I'm all about educating, teaching, and one of the reasons I set it up is, I always say, if you've heard me speak before, I say, there's so much information out there. But if you don't know what you're looking for,
right,
where are you going to go? How do you know what's right? And when you mentioned, you can just Google and go, which companies? It's like, people do that. And it's like, but if you don't know why you need to be a member of PPL, or why you need to be a member of PRS, or what they do, or what they need from you, it's not going to get you anywhere.
And also, if I had a dollar for every time I heard about a new royalties collection company who was promising to solve all the issues, I would have many dollars. And I think, probably some of them do, but, because some of them specialise. I heard of a great one. It was like, oh, fantastic, they're really focused on the Asia market. Great, there's not a lot going on there. Oh, great, there's a new startup that's covering Middle East. That's cool, because that's not been done. But no one company solves the whole thing. Yeah. So it's always still, as an artist, you need to be the central spoke for all of these other activities. And I think that's what you miss if you just Google it.
Yeah.
Because if you just Google it, you might come across some really cool companies who are US based, UK based, Asia based, who knows, but they might not cover all the things that you're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. And even though it's like, even if you're based here, your market could just be here. Your music could just be being, your fan base could just be here.
Right.
So the company in Asia,
why have you gone to all that effort to do a big deal in Asia and spend a lot of time on it? So it's about getting smart as well, isn't it? It's it's these contextual decisions that I think are obviously best left to humans, artists. They're not something that can be automated very easily. No, which is, I think, why the publishing industry is set up the way that it is.
Totally.
A lot of these things can't be automated yet.
I think that's the thing. It's yet, and it is. I've spoken to so many people, and they're just like, "Oh, but we can do a process. We can make royalties get paid out quicker." It's like, you can't. You can't, trust me. Like,
the only one I've heard of, and I'm not going to name any names, is a company who said they were going to pay out quicker. I'm sure everyone says that, but the way that this company said was that they were going to use an AI algorithm to predict how many streams you would get, and then pay you up front. And then they would go and claim, and they'd wait for the actual monies to come in.
Interesting.
High risk, pretty real. Who knows?
Interesting.
Because obviously that would appeal to the artists a lot, because I get my money in a day or a week or whatever.
Yes, but I'm going to go back to what I'm going to say at the beginning. If the bit at the beginning hasn't been done, like if you haven't. I know I sound like a broken record here, but it is. If you haven't agreed your shares with your co-writer, if you haven't registered it, if you don't have that little bit locked, the rest of that ain't going to work.
No, and also I will say this is an incredibly high risk strategy on the part of the company that are doing it, because, I would want a little more info on how accurate the stream predictor is.
Oh, I don't know who this company is.
I know, Do you know what? I'm not even sure I can remember off the top of my head, but I've got it in my emails. I'll be able to look it up. But again, I think it's an interesting way to look at innovation. And I'm not saying I think there should be innovation in the space.
Absolutely.
But I think people misunderstand the complexity when they think that there's just one simple fix.
Totally. I mean, we can't even get, I'm talking for the whole publishing community, I'm talking for the whole music industry right now, we can't even get metadata correct. Some people don't even know what metadata is. Like, we can't even get that tiny little bit, I say tiny, it's massive, but that piece of getting the track title and getting a songwriter, and if we can't even get that, delivered to where it needs to go. Guys, come on.
We're going to get our basics right first. So sort of moving on a little bit into sort of a little bit more advice for songwriters. I wanted to sort of jump into sync a little bit, because I think sync is super interesting, because I also, like yourself, grew up in an age where, if you licensed your music to a TV advert, you were a sellout. But what I love now is if you haven't synced your music to a
You're not good
TV
enough.
ad, it's probably because nobody asked, right? So
Pretty much.
So I kind of love the shift that we've seen in the industry. But I also wanted to ask, from your perspective, what are the complications you see in your line of work from sync? Because it can be where the big money is.
It can be. Doesn't really affect my kind of current kind of line of work.
The day-to-day.
The day-to-day, not really. It's not something that kind of impacts me or kind of crosses my path, so to speak, at the moment. But I will say, I mean, I'm not creative at all. I can't even tell you how to get a sync or what, what's going to get you a sync kind of thing.
But what about the nuts and bolts, the admin of the question?
Here we go, back to basics. You're not going to get a sync unless that song is fully registered, or the songwriters are identifiable. Like we know who the songwriters are. They're reachable. The shares total 100% on the composition side. They don't go over. They're not under. Fully registered with the Neighbouring Rights Society. You know who owns the sound recording, because at the point anybody wants to use a song for their TV ad or radio, whatever it is, they need to get permission from every single party on that song. So unless anybody's...
So a couple of dig-ins on this. You just mentioned briefly there about the shares.
Yeah.
So is this around the idea that, say you have 3 songwriters and they all say they have 60, 60 and 60%, and obviously that does not add up to 100. Yeah. Is this what we're talking about here? You have to make sure that the number of allocations per songwriter add up to 100% of the recording.
Yeah. And the one thing that always catches people out is, we'll just split it 3 ways, like equal. All right, cool. So one of you is going to get 33.34.
Right.
And the other 2 are going to get...
33.33.
And this has come up a few times, like, even that 0.1%. Am I just gone over my maths? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that right?
0.01, I think.
0.01. Yeah. Jeez, I'm a lawyer.
No, it's all right. It's hard. I'm only good when it's written down.
But even that little bit is going to tip it over the 100% mark. So even being super clear if you're agreeing it's a 3-way split, just agree who's going to get that 33.34. Because if you all go and register 33.34, it's going to go over. And it's that tiniest bit.
And then if the sync are trying to, the brand are trying to decide between this and another song that's got really, it's a 50-50 split between 2 songwriters, that's made the decision for them. So you don't want to miss out on an opportunity from that perspective.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that's really interesting. And so thinking about making sure those shares are split out and that it's correct. And I suppose a lot of artists are probably not even thinking along the lines of, they just kind of think the song will get discovered.
Totally. Yeah.
And then someone will want it enough that they'll do all the legwork to make it happen. But so they're not registering it because it just doesn't occur to them.
They won't, I'm not going to speak for kind of the music supervisors out there, and the companies that kind of seeking tracks for placement, but it's extra admin, it's extra chasing. They're not going to do it. If they need to get something out and they've heard something, they want that, they're going to go and negotiate that deal. But if they're like, we need to go and find, who owns the other 5%? We don't have the correct details. It's just too much work.
And now this might be why. And I'm thinking about from a longevity perspective, right? I just name checked Unchained Melody earlier as well. I happen to know where those assets live and who owns the ownership of that song, just out of interest. But as say you and I write a song now, and in 40 years someone wants to sync it, chances are my phone number's not going to be up to date. Is it literally a question of updating your own data with the agencies like PRS, or is this why people go with a publishing house? Because they can act. Because contacting lots of different people is complex. Is this one of the motivations why you would get a publisher?
Definitely, but sync shouldn't be the only reason you get a publishing deal, right? Publishing deals comes with so many other things as well. But yeah, your phone number might change, but as long as you're registered, I'm going to keep, this is going to be my tagline. As long as you're registered.
Get registered.
As long as you're registered. And your details should always be kept up to date with your PRO that you're a member of, say PROs for Music in the UK, because they're the ones that are sending you the money.
Yeah. Right? And that is a centralised hub in some respects.
Exactly.
Isn't it?
And so, yes, if I wanted to use a track and I discovered you and you're self-published and there's no phone number, I would contact PRS. They will contact you and then for you to get in touch with me.
Nice.
So yeah, check
So
your emails as well.
We did hit on some one other thing there that I wanted to dig in on the publishing side. So yes, getting a publishing deal might help with sync, but why else would artists go that route? Why should or shouldn't it be a priority for them, in your opinion?
I think, given the way the landscape's changed now, like I said before, you needed a publisher to get your music out there. You don't necessarily need a publisher anymore to get your music out there. You can do it yourself. And it's always great to get a publishing deal or even a label deal. Of course it is. But ask yourself why. Why do you want one? And publishers are great because, yes, they'll invest in you. They'll look after your copyrights. They'll protect your music. They'll put you in rooms with artists that will sing your song, to get that exposure, to get that break, to get those streams, which is all fantastic. They also have, a lot of publishers have a greater footprint, so they're going to protect your rights and collect royalties in other territories for you. All great. You don't have to do anything, sit there, collect the money. But then on the flip side, they're going to take a percentage as well, depending how long that deal is.
Yep.
You're tied into them for a certain period of time, depending on the kind of deal it is as well. You can't do anything with that. So they'll look, obviously you have a certain say. So if a sync opportunity comes, they will come and ask you, of course. And you have the right to kind of say yes or no, i.e. I would never do a sync, with anyone other than Nike.
Adidas, don't be calling.
Don't be calling.
Except be calling for me, because I take a standard size 8 and I only wear Adidas because they're just a good fit. So just getting that in there.
Exactly. Nike size 5.5. Thanks. Just in case.
Brand deals totally different from publishing.
So that's a whole other podcast.
From that publisher as well, like, what is there? Should you have an expectation as an artist on the level of interaction you should be getting from your publisher, or the level of service you should be getting, or does that again massively vary depending on who you go with?
Varies with who you go with. One thing I will say, publishers are now way more active than they used to be.
Right.
Before it was like, yes, I'm your publisher. That is it.
Goodbye.
That is it. We'll send you money each quarter or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, they are more active. They do, they'll put you forward for creative syncs. They do more.
Yeah.
So publishers, they are great. They do more than they used to.
So they're sort of moving almost into the artist services space.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Absolutely. But again, it depends on who the publisher is. Some are still sitting back, registering your songs, collecting your royalties and paying you. Others will go out there and, but then also you have to remember publishers have so many songwriters as well. So, are you just going to be one of so many, or are you going to be the one?
Right.
So,
yeah. All things to think about for artists in their career. Okay, so we are approaching the end of our fun chat.
Dun, dun, dun.
But I did want to ask a kind of a sort of almost like a dream future looking question. With the idea around, if you could change one thing about the industry you work in, about your specialisation, so music law, publishing, this area, what would be the one thing, if you could just click your fingers and change, what would that be?
I want songwriters to be recognised for their worth. I want the industry, I know that a lot of the industry say this already, but I want action. The songwriters are the backbone of this industry. Without songwriters, there is no industry. People forget that.
Yeah.
So I want some kind of shift. I want the songwriters to be the forefront. It's not just about the artists and the record labels. It's about those songwriters. And I want change. I want something to shift, and I want people to know that it's the songwriters.
I love it. So dream thinking. Okay. What would you like to see change for creators?
What would I like to see change for creators? I was going to say more money. I'm sorry. It's at the dollar bills, y'all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes the world go round.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. And I think the theme of paying people for creative work.
Yeah.
Paying people, not in exposure, not in, sort of payments that don't represent the amount of work that's gone in, really recognising the artist and the creativity, because we're music fans.
No, absolutely.
We're music fans at the end of the day.
And can I just add to that as well? I was just thinking, more transparency, like more, again, education. I want platforms to educate as well as the publishers to educate their songwriters, labels to educate their artists, like educate them as to what a publishing deal is, what a label deal is, how you getting your royalties, how are you getting paid? So don't just leave it on the creators as well. Like, I think there needs to be a bit more transparency from the other side as well.
I think we have to turn this into a whole web series then, Bina.
I'm in.
I love it. Different pair of sneakers each episode.
I'm in.
Brilliant.
I've got enough.
Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
I feel like I've learned a lot.
Amazing.
And I've thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. It's been amazing.